Simon says subscribe and click on the bell icon to receive notifications.
Very warm welcome, everyone. PowerPoint hacks for 2023. That's what I've decided to call this webinar today. We're going to be exploring some really cool stuff in PowerPoint so we can really start to supercharge our skills when it comes to just putting together really engaging slide decks. And I think when it comes to PowerPoint, there are really two main aspects. You've got the content and then you've got the design, and both are equally as important. We need to ensure the content is readable, easy to interpret, but also we don't really want a death by PowerPoint situation where people are literally falling asleep because your slides are poorly designed, boring, contain too much text, and are just quite uninteresting. So we're going to take a look at some tips today that are going to liven up your presentations and just give them a little bit of pizzazz. Now, before we dive in, I will just introduce myself for anybody who is new to our webinars. So my name's Deborah Ashby. I'm a Microsoft instructor, and as you can probably tell from the accent, I'm from London in the UK. I've been training for a really, really long time. So it's over 14 years now. I need to update my slides, but about 25 years in the IT industry and about 17 years now in IT training. So I've been using PowerPoint for many, many years. I've sat through many, many presentations. So hopefully I'm well positioned to give you some tips. Just a little bit of housekeeping as well before we begin. The chat panel is open, so if you want to speak amongst yourselves, things like that, then please feel free to do that. As I briefly mentioned, I can't see the chat panel when I'm sharing my screen. So if you type a question in there, I'm not going to be able to see it during the presentation. So what I always recommend is if you've got a question, just note it down, and then I do leave time at the end so you can ask all your questions then, and we can go through them. So that's sort of generally how I like to work it. Also, what else do I need to tell you here before we begin? Right, so in this presentation, we're going to be starting from a blank PowerPoint presentation. So there isn't a practice file that you need to download as there normally is with Excel. If you want to follow along with me, just fire up PowerPoint because we're just going to create a blank presentation from scratch. So really nice and simple. And the question that everybody always asks, is this being recorded? Yes, it is. I've made sure that I've turned on the recorder. You will receive a copy of that recording. I think it goes out when you get the next newsletter from Simon Says It, something like that. I'm sure the regulars on this call can type that into the chat. I'm not exactly sure when it goes out, but yes, you will get a copy of the recording so you can go back and revise what we've gone through. So with all that said, let's take a look at our agenda for today. Now, originally I was only going to cover 10 little hacks, but when I was putting this together, there's so many more than 10. So I'm just basically going to go for an hour and try and get as many in as I can. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about slide layouts at the beginning, just very briefly, because I think most people are reasonably aware as to how those work. I am going to introduce you to some free resources. So these are resources that I love to use when I'm putting together my PowerPoint presentations for things like free images, royalty-free images that you can use in business or personal presentations, anything like that. So we'll go through some free resources. And then we'll start to build a presentation. And as we're building this presentation, we're going to learn more hacks along the way. So we're going to start out by creating an engaging title slide. I'm going to show you how you can work effectively with background images, resizing them correctly so they don't appear distorted. We're going to talk about formatting and also aligning text boxes and various other items on your slides accurately. We're going to speak about the selection pane, something which I use all the time and I find so useful. And we're going to talk about gradient overlays. And if you don't know what that is, then that's pretty fun. So that will be something nice to look forward to. We're going to create an About Us slide. We're going to take a look at the Eyedropper tool. We're going to speak about aligning objects and using the crop and fill utility. We're going to take a look at Morph. Now, this is a transition that's extremely popular at the moment, and it really does liven up your slides. It makes your slides look more like almost like an animated video presentation as opposed to an actual slide deck. So Morph is really cool. So we'll take a look at how that works. We're going to create a divider slide where we're going to explore how you can do things like merge shapes together, merge images across shapes, and also just some fun stuff when it comes to creating really nice, effective slides with some cool text effects. A couple of really practical things which you could use in a business context, so things like creating a timeline and an organization chart. I'm going to show you a little trick for converting things to SmartArt really quickly. We're going to show you how to format the timeline and also some really cool tricks when it comes to working with the icons that are available within PowerPoint as well. I'm just going to finish off by taking a quick look at master slides because those are always the topic that people find a little bit confusing. So we'll work through a little bit on that as well. Now, hopefully that should be enough to take us through the entire hour. So with all that said, let's get going. Now, as I mentioned, we are going to be working from a blank PowerPoint presentation. So if you want to follow along, just fire up your presentation. I'm just going to create a new blank presentation. Now, I will pause every now and again because if you are following along with me, I know it's a little bit crazy if I go a bit too fast. So I will try and go more slowly. All right. So once you fire up your PowerPoint presentation, in general, you're always going to see these placeholders on the slide. So you can see here it says click to add a title, click to add a subtitle. Now, these can be useful. You can just click in here and start adding your text in. But in general, if you want to start from a blank slide, which I will say that most of the time I do, you can just change the layout. So on the Home tab, go to Layout, and then we can choose the blank layout just to get rid of those placeholders. So now we're starting from a nice clean slate. And the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to build a really nice, attractive looking title slide for our presentation. And what we're going to do is we're going to add an image and we're going to use an image that fills the entire background of the slide. And as we do this, I'm going to show you a couple of issues that you might come across and how I've seen people try and fix this. Now, a lot of the images that or in fact, all of the images I'm going to be using in the presentation today, I'm downloading from one of two websites. And this is my first recommendation for a free resource if you're looking for images to use in your presentations. So if I just minimize PowerPoint down for a moment and pull up, I think I've got them over here. The first website I always use for images is pexels.com. So make a note of this website. If you've got your camera on your phone, you can take a quick photograph of this screen so you know where to go. But this is an amazing website full of free resources. So not only does it have free photos, it also has things like free videos if you want to use those in your presentations. So if I was to type in, let's just type in something like mountains, it's very simple. You just type in your keyword and you have access to all of these really high quality images that you can use freely in your PowerPoint presentations. Also note here, if you're looking for videos to use in your PowerPoint presentations, you have a videos link just here. And this will give you some very short looping videos, which can look really nice in the background of your slides. So if you want to choose a picture, you can just simply click on it and you have the free download button in the top right-hand corner. So Pexels is an amazing resource for images for your PowerPoint presentations. Another website that's really similar is this one just here. So this is unsplash.com. Again, take a picture if you need to. This is pretty much the same as Pexels. It has the same sort of search bar here. You just type in what you want to search for, and it's going to bring up images and videos that you can download. Now, I tend to always gravitate towards Pexels. I don't know why. If you want to follow along with me, we're going to grab our first image from here. So if you type in team into the search bar, it's going to pull up some businessy like pictures. Now, I don't mind which one you use. You don't have to use exactly the same one that I've used, but if you can just download one of these, we're going to use that in the first slide of our presentation. So click on any image, download it to your PC, and then we're going to go in and pick it up. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds just to do that. And whilst I'm here, I'll just check the chat panel in case anybody's having any issues. I can't see any comments in there, so I think we might be all good. All right, hopefully everybody's got a little image downloaded. We're going to insert the image now into our PowerPoint slide. So we're going to jump up to the insert ribbon In the images group, we can go to pictures. We have a few different choices in here. We could choose an online picture, a stock image, or we can go to this device. So we want to go to this device because hopefully we all have our pictures downloaded to our downloads folder. Where is my downloads folder? There it is. Okay. Oh, in fact, hang on. I put mine in a different folder, didn't I? Yours will be in your downloads folder. Mine's in this folder. So let's grab our image and insert it. And this is where you will come across your first issue when it comes to filling the background of a slide with an image. Notice that when the image inserts into the slide, we get these two white spaces down the outside. So we have this sort of white space. Now, in general, what I see people do to fill this white space is that they'll grab the resize handles and they'll start dragging this image out to resize it so it exactly fits. Now, it doesn't look too bad with the image that I have, but it is slightly distorted. And with some images, it can look really, really terrible. So we don't want to be doing that. So let's Control Z to undo and put it back to how it was, because this is how you should be resizing images so that they fill the background of the slide. We should be using crop and fill. So make sure you're clicked on your picture. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so my slide isn't as big. On the Picture Format tab, in the Size group at the end, we want to click the lower half of the crop button, and then we want to choose Fill. Now, when we choose Fill, we get these little black handles around the outside of the image. So what we can now do is grab those handles and drag them out to fill the white space. So we're sort of marking where we want this image to stretch out to. Once we've done that, we go back to our lower half of our crop button and choose Fill again. And what it does is it effectively zooms into the image as opposed to stretching it out. So the aspect ratio is kept in a good format. It doesn't look distorted, and we can then move the image around to get it looking exactly as we want it to look. So I think about there is going to be perfect. And now we just need to click the top half of the crop button to perfectly crop that image to the background. That is a much better way of filling a background of a slide with an image. So stop stretching your images is what I'm trying to say. So now we have our background image. We're going to place some title text over the top because remember, this is our title slide. And again, we're going to come up with another little issue. So let's jump up to the Insert tab. We're going to go over to Text and we're going to insert a text box. So we're going to draw a text box. And I'm just going to type the name of my company. We're going to pretend my company is called Stick Social. Now, in general, when I'm aligning things like titles, I like to sort of drag the placeholder so that it is the full width of the slide, because then when I click the center alignment button in the paragraph group on the home ribbon, I know that that is exactly in the center. I can then start to apply some formatting to this title. So I think I'm going to change the font, and I'm going to use one of my favorite fonts, Lato Black. And I'm going to make this title a lot bigger than it currently is. So let's take this up to, I think 66 is about right. And I'm also going to change the font color to white. So we have our title. I'm going to add a subheading underneath as well. Now you could go in and add another text box. A lot of the time, I just like to duplicate text that's already on the screen. I find that a little bit quicker. So if you want to duplicate a text box, make sure you have it selected and press Control D. That's going to give you an exact duplicate. And then all I'm going to do here is I'm going to modify the text. So the subheading is going to be B, let's say B simple, E social, something like that. And I'm going to take the font size down. We don't want this as big as the actual heading. And I think that looks pretty good. So drag that up very slightly. Now, if I want to align all of these, both of these text boxes to the dead center of the slide, what I'm going to need to do is group these two text boxes together. So once again, I'm going to select the heading, hold down the Shift key and select the subheading. And then the shortcut key to group things together is Control G. That's now one object, and it's going to make it a lot easier for us to align it to the center of the slide. Because what we can then do is use our alignment tools, and you'll find them on numerous different ribbons. We have them on the Home ribbon under the Arrange group, or we have them on the Shape Format ribbon in the Arrange group over here. So when we click Align, we can choose to align to the middle, and we can align to the center to make sure that that is dead in the center of the slide. So just a couple of little tricks just there. Now, this looks pretty good, but the problem that you have sometimes, particularly if you have an image in the background that has lots of colors in it, or it's quite a busy image, is that the text that you put over the top can get a little bit lost in the image. And this text, it doesn't look too bad, but it doesn't really pop out from the slide. So what I like to do is I like to add what I call a gradient overlay over the top. Now, that's a very fancy word, and I think it's one that I just invented. It's a very fancy word for simply a rectangle where we change the transparency. So for something like this, what I would do here is I would jump up to Insert, I would grab the Rectangle tool from the Shapes gallery, and then I would draw a big old rectangle all the way over the top, so it covers the entire image. Now, once I have this like that, I'm then going to format this shape. So let's right click and go into Format Shape. Now I'm going to expand fill, and I'm actually going to leave it on a solid fill for the time being, and I'm going to change the color to, let's go for a darker gray, almost black color. And then I'm going to adjust the transparency slider. And you'll see as I do this, I can let more of the image show through or less of the image show through. So this is sort of pretty much personal preference, but it just means that the image isn't so bright. When we pull that text forward, it's really going to stand out. So I'm going to take mine down to, I think 26% is about right. Let's close the Format Shape pane. Now what I need to do is I need to bring that text forward, because currently we have this overlay, this transparent overlay over the top. And this moves me nicely into my next talking point, which is using the selection pane. And this is a little thing that I find people don't generally tend to know that much about, but it's something that I use all the time. So what we can do is if we go to or click somewhere on the slide, go up to Shape Format, and in the Arrange group, we have a Selection Pane option. Now, if you've never used the Selection Pane before, the Selection Pane basically controls what we call the Z order in PowerPoint. So you need to think of your PowerPoint slide as if it's in layers. And if you've ever used an application like Photoshop, you might be familiar with that concept of layers. So objects are stacked on top of each other in PowerPoint. And you can see in the selection pane exactly how those objects are stacked. Now, currently, you can see it says rectangle 8, group 7, text box 6, so on and so forth. Now, if you have lots of objects on your slide, this can get a little bit confusing, because by default, PowerPoint's just going to name these objects as it likes. So it will call rectangles rectangle 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So what I like to do in here is I always go in and rename these objects so I know which ones I'm selecting. For example, if I select picture 4, I know that that is the background picture. So I'm going to double click and rename this to Team Photo to make it easy to identify. I have a little group here. This is the group that contains my text. If you remember, we grouped the heading and the subheading. So I'm going to rename where it says group 7. I'm just going to say that this is my text. And text box 6, that is the subheading. And text box 5 is the main heading. And then the rectangle, that is my overlay. So I'm just going to rename that. So now that I've renamed these items, it's a lot easier to know which ones we're selecting, because that's what you can do in this selection pane. We can click on items to select them on the slide, or we can do things like hide them. So if I click on this little eyeball icon next to any of these, it will hide certain things on the slide. Now, this can be useful if you're trying to maybe get to the picture, which is sitting at the back. You could hide everything above it so that you can actually get to the picture and work on the picture. So hiding and unhiding is really important. We can also use this to reorder our layers. So currently the team photo is the bottom layer. We then have the text in the middle and then the overlay over the top. And what I want is for the text to be at the front. So I'm going to grab text in the selection pane and I'm simply going to drag it up and place it above overlay. And that's going to bring that text to the front on the slide. So a really great way of changing the Z order, the layer order of items in our PowerPoint presentation can be super helpful, particularly if you have lots going on a slide. So that's the selection pane. I want to talk a little bit more about background fills and gradient overlays, because this is going to lead me into showing you another really cool resource when you're putting together your PowerPoint presentations. So let's click on our gradient overlay, our little transparent background. Once again, we're going to right click and we're going to go into Format Shape. And this time, instead of having a solid fill, I want to do a gradient fill instead. Now, if we select gradient fill, you can see what it does. It's going to fill it with the default gradient. Now, the way that gradients work are we have what we call gradient stops underneath. So I have 4 gradient stops in this presentation. And we can change the color of each of these gradient stops to kind of customize the blend of colors that we're using in this gradient. Now, a website that I love to use when I'm trying to do something like this, when I want to do a gradient background, is this website just here. So let me flip across to it. This website just here is called coolers.co. And this is an amazing website if you want to find colors that work really well together. So this doesn't just work for gradients, it works for anything else that you're trying to design in PowerPoint. You can explore color palettes that work really well together. You can explore gradients that work really well together. So if we want to grab a gradient, if we go up to Tools, you can see here, Browse Gradients. Let's click it. And it takes us into a whole list of different colors that work really well as gradients. And notice as I hover over, it shows you the hexadecimal code of those colors, which we can then copy and paste into PowerPoint. So if we scroll down, I think I'm going to use this one just here. So what I could do is I can hover over. All we need to do to copy this code is click. It copies it to the clipboard, and then we just need to go back to PowerPoint, and we can now add it as one of our gradient stops. Now, I only want to have 2 color gradients in this particular presentation, so I'm going to remove 2 of these gradient markers, and I'm just dragging them off that gradient stops bar. I'm now going to click on this first gradient just here, and when it comes to the color, if we jump into more colors, this is where we can paste in our gradient code, Control V. Click on OK, and it's going to add that to my gradient. I can then go back to the website and pick up the other color. So we want this lighter, sort of beigey orange color. Click to copy to the clipboard. Jump back to PowerPoint. We're going to select the other gradient stop and do the same thing. More colors, and then Control V to paste that in. We can now adjust our gradient stops by sliding them up and down to get the exact blend that we want. So if we want more purple, we can drag that up, so on and so forth. Now, I want to also make this transparent because I still want that picture underneath to show through. So I'm going to drag this down a little bit until I get it into a position that I like. Now, I think I'm going to make the purple a little bit darker. And you could fiddle around with this all day. But yeah, I think that's about right just there. So you can see that really nice effect that we're getting now. It's much more interesting than just having a solid fill background. And this website is so amazing if you want to find colors that work really well together. Okay, so that is another little resource tip for you there. So let's move on now to creating our second slide. Now, the second slide that we're going to create is going to be an About Us slide or a Meet the Team kind of slide. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to duplicate, or first of all, I'm going to ungroup the two headings that we have on the main slide. So to ungroup things, the keyboard shortcut is Control Shift G. You can also right click and you have an ungroup option in the menu as well. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because we're going to create a new slide in a moment and we're going to have a heading on that slide, but I want to make sure that the heading is using this same purple color that we have in this gradient. So if you have things like branded colors that you need to use for your company presentations, you want to make sure that when you're working with headings and things like that, everything looks consistent and is using those same colors. So what I'm going to do first of all here is I'm going to press Control D to duplicate that heading. And I'm going to change the color of this. And I'm going to make sure that I get this purple color just here. Now, this leads me on to my next little tip, which is using the Eyedropper tool. Now, if you've never used this little tool before, it is absolutely amazing. I love this. It's so good if you're trying to create consistent look and feel across your slides. So with the text box selected, we're going to go to the Home tab. We're going to go to Font and notice that we have Eyedropper at the bottom here. Now, what the eyedropper does is notice that my cursor changes to a little, I think we used to call those pipettes back in the day. And as I drag my mouse around the slide, you can see it's picking up in that little preview square the colors that I'm hovering over. So this means that you can basically pick up colors from your presentation and change the font to that specific color. So if you're trying to work with colors within the presentation, this is perfect. So I'm going to use this dark purple. Let's click, and it's going to change the font to that specific color. So I really love this little tool for making consistent color schemes. So now that we have that, I'm going to insert a new slide. We're going to use blank again, and now I'm just going to copy and paste this across. Sorry, cut and paste. Control X, Control V. I'm going to format this a little bit. I don't want this to be quite as big as the other one. So let's take this down to, I'm going to say 54. I'm going to change the title. Let's call this Meet Team and just move this into place. So on this second slide, what we're going to create is we're going to have a look at a few techniques here. We're going to take a look at shapes, alignment, we're going to fill some shapes, and then we're going to look at the morph transition. So quite a bit going on here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert 3 circles. So let's go to the Insert tab, into Shapes, and we're going to select the Oval tool. Now with shapes in PowerPoint, if I was to just draw this circle, you can see it kind of goes all over the place. And if you want a perfect circle, that can be quite hard to do if you use this method. So instead, what you want to be doing when you insert your shapes is holding down the Shift key when you drag, and that's going to give you a perfect circle. So I think I'm going to make mine about that big. Let's move it into place. And I want 3 of these. So again, I'm just going to duplicate the shape by pressing Control D, Control D. Now I'm just going to roughly move these into position because I want to get the alignment tools to take all the hard work out of aligning objects for me. So if I want to align these 3 circles with each other and also into the center of the slide, I simply need to select them. I can do that by holding down Shift and selecting all the circles. Alternatively, to make selections, you can simply draw a big rectangle around your shapes, and that's going to select them as well. So now I have them selected. Again, I can do this on the Home tab. We have an Arrange group just here, or we can use the Shape Format tab. We have alignment options just here. So I'm going to say align to the middle. And I'm also going to say distribute horizontally because that's going to give me equal distance between all of those circles. Then what I can do is group Control G, and I can align them as a group to the center of the slide. So I can then say align center and align middle. Once I've done that, Control-Shift-G to ungroup so I can work on them separately. Okay, so your alignment tools are really, really useful when it comes to aligning things on your slide. So now that we have these three circles, what I want to do is I want to fill these circles with images of the heads of departments. So again, I would recommend that I've got some images saved off, but if you want to quickly jump onto Pexels, if you want to follow along with me and maybe you can search for man, woman, business person, something like that. If you want to do that and just download 3 images to use, then I will just give you a few seconds to do that. As I said, I already have mine saved off, but if you do want to follow along, I recommend you do that. Whilst you're doing that, I'm just going to go back to this first slide and I'm just going to remove, I can see that I've got an outline around the outside here, which is really annoying me. So I'm going to go to shape format and just remove the shape outline, like so. All right, hopefully everybody has some images downloaded. Because again, filling shapes with images is something that I've seen people over the years do in very strange ways. And there is a very simple way to do this. Again, it's using crop and fill. So let's click on the first shape. We're going to right click and go to Format Shape. Now we want to fill our shape with a picture. Now with this, it's always going to fill it with the first texture in the list or the last picture that you used. So for me, it's filling it with the last texture. That's okay because we just want to go to Insert under Picture Source and then we can pick up the picture that we've saved off. So I have 3 pictures that I'm going to use here. Let's select Nathan first of all, click on Insert. Now, notice what happens. Again, we're having this issue with distortion. So this is where we can use crop and fill to fix this issue, much like we did on the first slide. So with the image selected, we're going to jump up to picture format, go into crop, and we're going to use that fill button again. As soon as we do that, the image is no longer distorted. We can drag him around. We can make him bigger if we want him to appear more zoomed in within the shape. And then we can reposition. Once we're happy with the position, we can click the top half of the crop button. Nice and simple. Let's fill the other 2 in exactly the same way. We're going to go to Picture. I'm going to go to Insert. Let's pick up Christina. Again, she's completely distorted, so we need to go to Crop and Fill. And then we can reposition her and click the top half of the crop button. And the final one, practice makes perfect is what I say. Let's click on Insert and we're going to pick up Hillary. And once again, we need to do crop and fill. And then we can move her and click the top half of the crop button. So really simple to get nicely sized images inside shapes. So now we have our images, let's add some text boxes because we're going to talk a little bit more about alignment, because aligning things on your slide makes the difference. It can take your presentation from looking really professional to just looking a complete mess if you don't have things aligned correctly. So on the Insert tab, let's add a text box and I'm just going to add his name at the bottom. So let's say Nathan Jones. I'm going to drag that in. And again, if I wanted to make these the same color as the heading or the heading text, again, I could use my Eyedropper tool. So with the text box selected, I can go to Font, Eyedropper, and I could pick up the color from there. Okay, so that Eyedropper is really a godsend. Now, notice here, when I hover or move the text box around, can you see those red guidelines that are coming up? Those are called smart guides, and they can be super helpful when you're trying to arrange things on your slide. Now, if you don't see them, you're going to need to turn your smart guides on. You do that by right-clicking on the background of the slide, going down to grids and guides, and then you want to make sure you have a tick next to smart guides just there. And that means when you start moving anything around on your slide, it's going to try and work out what you're trying to align it with. So for me, when I move this around, it's telling me that that is the dead center of the picture, which is perfect. So I can then let go. I'm going to duplicate, Control D, drag it over. And again, you can see as I move this, I'm getting those smart guides come up. So now I can see it's in the middle of the picture, and it's also aligned with the Nathan Jones text box. I just need to change it to her name, like so. And again, let's duplicate, and we can move this around until we get it in the position that we want. And I will say this isn't an exact science. Sometimes you don't get the guidelines come up, but in general, this works really well. So let's change the name here, Hillary Roy. And again, this does depend on how long the name is as well. So sometimes you might have to rejig it around to get it in exactly the correct position. So grids and guidelines, recommend you turn those on when you're working in PowerPoint. So now that we have this meet the team slide, it's looking pretty good. In a real world situation, I'd probably add their job titles underneath. Due to time, I'm not going to do that because I want to move on to showing you the morph transition, because this is really awesome. Now, the morph transition it's kind of like animation, but it's not classed as animation. It's classed as a transition instead. And morph really does add a really nice, smooth, slick effect to your slides. And there's lots of different ways that you can use morph. I highly recommend that you jump onto YouTube and just have a little look at some morph videos, because there's some people creating some really effective and cool looking presentations using morph. I'm going to show you one example in the business context of how you might want to use it so you can see how it works. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to duplicate the slide. So Control D to duplicate. And what I'm going to do is on this second slide, I'm going to make some changes. So maybe on this second slide, I want to make Nathan a lot bigger. So let's hold down Shift, drag the resize handle, and just make him a lot bigger. I'm going to move him down, and I'm going to make the other two a lot smaller. So hold down Shift as you drag, and I'm going to take it down to about there. Hold down Shift and drag, and I'm going to take it to there. And I'm going to put these two down in the corner. I'm going to delete out their little text boxes, because this slide is where we focus on Nathan. So we're going to make him the star of the show. Let's increase the font size here. I'm going to take that up to 44. Drag it out. And maybe on this slide, we have a little bit of information about Nathan, what he does, how he can help you, that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to insert a text box that has some dummy text in it. So again, this is quite a useful little tip. If you have to plan slides out and you want to maybe see what text looks like in different layouts, and you don't want to actually type in any meaningful text, you can simply type this little bit of code, rand, open bracket, and then the number of paragraphs that you want and the number of lines, close the bracket, and it will generate some sample text for you. So you can see I have 2 paragraphs of 3 lines. So let's pretend that this is kind of a bit of information about Nathan. I'm going to duplicate the slide again, Control D. And we're going to do the same for the other 2 people. So this time we're going to hold down Shift. We're going to take Nathan down so he's smaller. Now notice as I drag, can you see those red smart guides again? It's telling me that I've dragged him to the same size as the other 2 images on the slide. So that is another really useful little feature. This time we're going to replace him with Christine. And let's make her large. Drag her out like that. Move her there. And then I'll just change her name. And let's do the final slide, and then we can watch the magic happen. Let's do Control D to duplicate. This time we're going to minimize Christine all the way down. And we're going to drag this one up here. And I'm being very rough with these sizes, so they're probably not exactly accurate. I'm sure you can make yours a little bit more accurate than I'm making them here. I think Christine needs to be a little bit bigger. There we go. Drag her down here. And then we can replace the text like so. So now we have these 4 slides. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select them all by holding down the Shift key. So I'm not selecting the first slide. I'm only selecting slides 2 to 5. And then we're going to apply the morph transition. So up to transitions, morph is the first one. Let's click it. And just so you can see how this works, let's run the slideshow. Now we're going to start from the beginning. So there is our first slide, looking very fancy and nice. We're going to move on to the next slide, but check out what happens just here. When I move on, we get this really nice morph transition. If we move to the next slide, you can see how that looks. So it looks a lot less like you're moving between different slides and having that death by PowerPoint feel. It looks much more like a smooth, slick, animated transition. So that's one example. There are so many different ways that you can use morph to get some really, really cool effects. The important point with morph is that you have a starting slide and you need to duplicate the slide each time, okay? And then apply the transition. So that is morph, a reasonably new feature to PowerPoint. If you are using quite an old version, then you may not have it as yet, but I do know it is available it's definitely available in 365, 2021, 2019, I think 2016, but I'm not sure about that. Let's move on to the next slide that we're going to create. Now, this time I'm going to create two versions of this slide so you can see two different techniques. And what I'm going to create is a divider slide. So it might be that you have a lot of slides in your presentation and you want to maybe just have divider slides. So maybe you want to speak a little bit about the team before you actually go into the slide deck and you just want a slide up that's sort of like a placeholder. We might call that a placeholder slide or a divider slide. So I'm going to insert a brand new slide. Let's do a blank in here. Because the technique that I want to demonstrate here is how to use the merge shapes option. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert some shapes. So let's go to our shapes gallery and you can use this technique on any of these shapes. I'm going to use, where is it? This one here, the parallelogram. And let's draw it over here. And we're going to draw it so it looks something like that. And then I'm going to duplicate this twice. Control D, Control D. I'm just going to move these into place so we have this kind of effect. So I have three shapes just here. And what I'm trying to do here is I want to have an image that kind of spans across all of these shapes. So what you might think is you can select them all by holding down Shift, right click, go into Format Object, and you might think that you can go to Picture or Texture Fill and insert your picture from your source. So for this, I'm just going to use the same picture that we used on the title slide. But what you'll find is that not only is it completely distorted, but you get the image 3 times in each of the shapes. Now that's not the effect that I'm going for. I want it to span all of the shapes. So what we need to do here is with these selected, we need to go up to shape format and we have a merge shapes drop down over here. So for this, we can use union and check it out. We get what we're looking for. Now it is still a little bit distorted. So again, we need to use our crop and fill technique. I use this button or use this little technique so much when I'm working with images. So if we go to crop and fill, you can see it puts it back to normal. We can adjust it. So we can select how much of this image we want to show. I think that looks pretty good. Click the top half of the crop button and check it out. We have what we want. Now notice that I have some outlines around this shape. So I don't want that. So let's go to shape outline and say no outline. So this is a really nice technique that you might have seen in PowerPoint presentations before. You might have circles that you merge a shape across. You might have octagons. That's quite a popular one. A kind of octagon tiling effect with an image that's merged across them all to give a really nice look and feel. So now that I have that, that's the start of my divider slide. I'm going to just copy, Control C, this heading, and we're just going to put it over here. Drag it down. And there we go. We have a nice divider slide. I'm going to do another version of this divider slide to show you a completely different technique. So let's insert another blank slide. Now this time what we're going to do is we're going to grab the gradient background from the title slide. So Control C, and I'm just going to paste it over here. So it's definitely the quickest way to do this. Now, this is a really cool little text effect that you might want to employ to really give your presentations a modern look and feel. So what I'm going to do is let's grab the Meet the Team text again. We'll use this. Control C, Control V. Now I'm going to make a couple of changes. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to take this up to, let's make this quite large. I'm going to make it 80. Let's drag it out and kind of position that around there. Now, there's a bit of a process to this, so bear with me. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to duplicate the text that you can see, Control D, and I'm going to drag it just above. Now I'm going to remove the fill from this text so that we just have the outline around the outside. So let's go to the Shape Format tab, and I'm going to go to Text Fill, and I'm going to say No Fill, but I do want a white outline. And then I'm going to drag this back over the top of the other text. Now you might be thinking, what on earth is she doing? It will become clear in a moment, I promise you. So currently, if we open up the selection pane, you can see what I have. So we have our overlay, which is our colored background. I have the main heading, and they both say main heading. So it's really hard for me to see which one I'm actually selecting. So if I click the eyeball to hide one of them, I can see that this one is the actual outline. So I'm going to rename this outline so I can identify it a lot easier. Oops. And this one is, we'll say main text. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert another image, but we're going to remove the background from this image. So you get to see another little technique. So let's jump up to Insert, into Pictures, and this device. And again, I'm going to use this image. I would say if you want to remove the background from an image in PowerPoint, try and choose an image that has a fairly plain background. PowerPoint definitely isn't Photoshop, but we can do some basic edits. But I find that with an image that has a plainer background, you're going to get a better result with the Remove Background tool in PowerPoint. So if we want to use this image, but we don't want this white background around the outside, we can go up to the Picture Format tab, and we can click on Remove Background. Now you can see that PowerPoint does its best to try and do this, so everything that we can see here in pink is what's going to be removed. Now I can see that it hasn't quite got the selection right, so this is where I need to refine what we're selecting. So if you take a look up on the ribbons, you can see I can now mark areas to keep and areas to remove. So let's go for areas to keep first of all. I get a little pencil icon, and I can now just kind of draw over where I want to keep parts of the image, and it will readjust the selection. And most of the time it's pretty good at this. So we're not going to spend too much time getting it perfect, but that looks pretty good. Oh yeah, I want to keep the top of her head as well. So let's make sure we keep that. I can see we have some areas to remove. So let's click Mark Areas to Remove. And I'm just going to remove this grey background at the bottom. I think that's good enough for what we're trying to do here. Let's click on Keep Changes. And we've now done a pretty decent job at removing that background. Now, the effect that I want here is I want her to kind of look like she is behind the outline of this. So it sort of looks like she's moving behind this text. Now, this can all be done within the selection pane again. If we take a look where it has picture 5, I'm going to say that this is Sarah. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the layer that Sarah's on between the outline and the main text. So let's drag down, and now we get this kind of effect. So when we move her along, can you see she's sort of in between? So if I place her like that, we get this really cool text effect. And this is something that you see a lot in modern presentations. So if you really kind of want to bring your presentations into the modern era, this is the type of thing that you want to be trying to achieve. And as you can see, it is really simple to do. Lovely. I hope you're enjoying these tips so far. We've got a few more to go. We've got about 10 minutes, so we should finish dead on time. The next thing I want to show you is a little bit more of a practical thing when it comes to getting information into slides. So I'm going to go to the bottom of the presentation. Let's create a new blank slide because I want to talk about inserting things like timelines and organization charts. So I'm going to copy this heading. Let's just put it over here. And the first one we're going to do is going to be a timeline. Now, timelines are often things that you see in PowerPoint presentations. It might be a company who lists out their timeline of, when they were founded, all of their accomplishments and their goals over the years. You might see various different kinds of timelines. Now, if you have to create a timeline, you could create it manually by using shapes and connectors, but that is quite a bit of hassle. Instead, what you could do is just type out what you want in a text box and then very quickly convert it to a timeline using Convert to SmartArt. So let me show you what I mean. If we insert another text box, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to type out, let's say, goals for a company. So let's say in 2014, the company was founded. Company founded. Maybe in 2015, we had first round of investment. 2016, we had the second round of investment. I'll just do a couple more. 2017, let's say we opened new offices. And in 2018, we won can't type today, Startup of the Year award, something like that. So maybe you have your company's achievements listed out. It might be something completely different. The principle is the same. So if you have it in a text box, what you can do if you want to very quickly create a timeline is make sure you have the text box selected, and then up on the Home tab in the paragraph group, we have this button just here, Convert to SmartArt Graphic. If we click the drop down, we have some smart art that we can convert it to, or if we want to see the full list, we can go into more smart art graphics. But the one that we want is timeline. Here it is just here. Let's click it, and then we can resize it. And in one click, we've created ourselves quite a nice looking timeline. I say quite nice. I would probably then go in and start formatting this to make it look a little bit better than it currently does. So very nice and quick to create these timelines in this particular way. Now, of course, you can ungroup everything that you see on here, Control-Shift-G to ungroup. And then we can modify different parts. So if you want to change the color, you can do that. Go up to Shape Format, and we can make it a similar color to our theme. You can go in, modify the text, all of that kind of stuff. But that Convert to SmartArt button is the thing I want you to take away from this. Type it out in a text box, convert to SmartArt, and you're done. Okay, I'm going to show you another example of this in a moment for an organization chart. But before we do, I want to just show you a little trick when it comes to using icons. Because icons are a really important part of PowerPoint these days. We see icons in presentations all the time. Now, something that you might not know is that you can actually customize the icons that are available in PowerPoint. So let's jump up to the Insert ribbon. In the Illustrations group, let's click on Icons to open up the Icons gallery. Now in here, we have a selection of icons that we can use in our PowerPoint presentations, and I'm going to search for the word seed, for seed investment, let's say. And I think I'm going to use this icon just here. Let's insert it. Now, most people are reasonably familiar with these icons. If I make this a little bit bigger, and you can change the color of these. You can go up to graphics format. You can change them to a different fill color. But what a lot of people don't know is that you can actually change the color of different parts of this icon. So if I want the actual seed and the leaves to be a different color from the soil, I can do that. And a lot of people don't know that you can do this simply by ungrouping the icon. So again, you can press Control-Shift-G. Alternatively, you can right-click, go to Group, and choose Ungroup. Now it's going to ask you if you want to convert it to a drawing object. We'll say yes, but that effectively ungroups it, and we can now select different parts of the icon. So if I want the seed or the soil to be a different color from the seed, I can select it, and then I can go to shape format, and maybe I want to fill it with something that looks more like soil, like so. You could then group these back together again. So Control G to group, and then you can move these to wherever you want them to be. Whoops, I don't want to distort it. But yeah, so you can customize the icons that you have in PowerPoint. Another little tip that not a lot of people know about. Now, along a similar principle, and I'm just going to duplicate this entire slide. I'm going to select everything by drawing a box around it and delete. We can create an organization chart in a very similar way to what we did with the timeline. So if you need to create a very quick organization chart, you can insert a text box and type out the hierarchy. So maybe you have your CEO at the top, and then underneath the CEO, we need to make sure that we press the tab key to indent so PowerPoint knows the structure. Maybe we have the sales manager. And then underneath the sales manager, we have sales agent. Whoops. 1, and maybe we have sales agent 2. And then maybe we have marketing manager, who's on the same level as the sales manager. And then we have marketing assistant 1. You could carry on going. So what you can then do is select the text box, and once again, if you go to Convert to Smart Art, you can insert an organization chart really, really quickly. Check it out. It's literally a one-click option. You can, of course, then go in, format these, make this look a lot nicer than I have, but just getting that general structure in, it's a lot easier just to type it out, making sure that you tab and indent for the various different levels of people, and then convert it to Smart Art. A really cool little option. So those are most of the tips that I wanted to show you. I did want to finish off by just talking very briefly about master slides. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because master slides is a huge topic, but something that people always ask me is, say they have a company logo that they want to appear on every single slide. Do they have to copy and paste it onto every slide? No, you don't. You simply add it to the slide master. So let me show you how that works. If we go up to the View tab, into Master Views, we have Slide Master just here. And the Slide Master is basically a template that controls everything that you see in your slide layouts. So we have all of our different slide layouts down here. And all I need to do, if I want to add a logo to the bottom corner, I just need to add it to the Slide Master. So what I can do is go to Insert, go into Pictures, and again, I have a little logo saved off, so we'll just use that as the example. And I'm just going to make this a bit smaller just so you get the idea. And then I can place this wherever I like. Maybe I want it down here or on this side. Let's put it down there. And then when we close the slide master, you can see that it's now going to appear on every slide in the presentation. So you're not going to have to copy and paste things across. If you want specific pieces of text to appear on every slide, you could also add those to the slide master, or maybe a header or a footer or things like that. So the slide master, it is a huge topic. It can get a bit more complicated than that, but that is the sort of general premise of why you might use it. Now, just to finish off with a very final, I'm going to give you 2 final little tips because these are really quick and really useful. You can see here the presentation that we're building, we've used a lot of imagery, and you might find that if you're creating a really nice presentation, you're probably going to use a lot of pictures. Now, what can tend to happen is your PowerPoint presentation can start to get very large in file size, and it can get slow, it can be quite laggy, so we want to try and minimize the file size as much as possible. So if you do have a presentation that has a lot of pictures, what I would recommend you do is you go onto a slide that contains any picture, click on it, go to picture format, and then in the adjust group, we have a compress pictures option. So if we click on this, we can choose if we want to just compress this picture that we've selected. In general, I will always compress every picture in my presentation. So I deselect this so it compresses everything. It will also delete cropped areas of the picture. So when we crop pictures, we leave a lot of the picture around the outside. So we want to remove that. click on OK, and that's really going to help with the size of your file, and it's going to help your presentation run a little bit better. So compressed pictures is another really useful little option. And the final little tip, because we are just coming up to 7:30, is adding a QR code, which makes it so much easier to connect with your audience. So you might have seen this. I mean, I think most of us are familiar these days with QR codes, but did you know that you can add them into PowerPoint? So think of it this way. If you're giving a presentation to an audience and you want to direct them to maybe your website or maybe your YouTube channel or something else, you could type it out on the screen and they could take a picture of it, or you could add a QR code that links them directly to it. Now, if you've never used this before, it is a little add-in in Excel. Sorry, not in Excel, in PowerPoint. Oh my God, I've got Excel on the brain. So let me just delete out the organization chart, if it's going to let me. There we go. And if we go to the insert ribbon into add-ins, if you don't have it, you're going to need to go to Get Add-ins. And it's really simple to search for. If you just type in QR, you're looking for this one just here, QR for Office. So if you click on Add, it's going to add that little add-in in, and this is where you can customize where you want this QR code to go to. So I'm just going to use Google as an example. So let's just type in www.google.com. You can put in whatever you like. You can change the color of the QR code. You can really customize it. And then if you click on Insert, it's going to generate a QR code which you can put onto your slide so that people can very quickly connect with you and jump to whichever website you're directing them to. So QR code, a really nice little add-in for PowerPoint. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope you all learn at least one thing that you think is going to help you. Have a great night, a great afternoon, a great morning, wherever you are, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. To see the full course that this video came from, click over there. And click over there to see more videos from Simon Says It.